The alarms of the stock market crash echoed through the halls, and the once arrogant Mitsuji knelt in despair. I pulled the trembling Yukino firmly into my arms, my thumb brushing against the corner of her reddened eyes. Hold me tight. This is just the aftershock of the liquidation. Our empire has only just begun to rise. Welcome to Apex System, an exciting story is about to begin. A sense of weightlessness. The roar of the gale tearing at my eardrums. And the excruciating pain of my body slamming onto the cold asphalt of a Tokyo street. This was the final memory of my past life. Mitsuji Kigo's hypocritical smile, along with the brutal force of his subordinates pushing me off the rooftop terrace, was seared deep into my soul. Jinguji-kun? Yoru-kun? Are you still listening? A voice laced with a hint of hypocritical concern abruptly yanked me back from the abyss of death. I gasped for air in heavy gulps, cold sweat drenching the back of my shirt. My vision gradually shifted from a blurry blood red to a sharp focus, revealing the harsh glare of incandescent lights and the smell of cheap coffee mixed with cigars lingering in the air. I hadn't died on that freezing street. I was sitting in my own cramped office. And across the wide mahogany desk sat a middle-aged man in a sophisticated, custom-tailored suit, his hair combed back without a single strand out of place. Kigo Mitsuji. The head of the Mitsuji Zaibatsu, a top-tier Kanto conglomerate, and the very man who, in my past life, had swallowed me whole and driven me to a dead end. My eyes quickly swept over the digital calendar on the desk. It clearly displayed a date from 5 years ago. I have been reborn. I am back to the eve of my company's bankruptcy, just before it was set to be maliciously acquired by the Mitsuji conglomerate. Yoru-kun, I know your father's sudden passing has been a heavy blow to you. Kigo Mitsuji pushed a thick stack of documents toward me, his eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses shimmering with a look of feigned compassion. But Jinguji Tech is currently burdened with 50 million in debt, and tomorrow is the bank's final deadline. Sign this acquisition agreement. The Mitsuji conglomerate will settle all your debts, and you can remain with the company as an honorary director. This is the only way to preserve your father's life's work. Looking at the contract that had pushed me into an abyss of eternal damnation in my previous life, I felt my stomach churn with nausea. In my past life, I had believed his lies and signed my name. Only later did I discover the fatal debt transfer clauses hidden within the contract. Not only did I lose all the company's core patents, but I was also inexplicably saddled with 300 million in joint liability debt, which eventually led to the ruin of my family and my own death. I clenched my fists, my nails digging deep into my palms, using the pain to force myself to stay calm. Right now, I have nothing. If I were to snap and turn against him here and now, I would have no chance of winning. At the very moment I was pondering how to break the deadlock, a faint sensation of an electric current flickered across my retina. Immediately following, a translucent, ghostly blue holographic interface slowly unfurled within my field of vision. System rebooting. CS2 Tactical Business System activated. Player, Jinguji Yoru. Current round status, pistol round, round 1, team economy, $800, extremely scarce, eco-round strategy recommended, equipment status, no armor, default pistol, 0 business defensive capability. What is this? I blinked in disbelief, but the interface remained steadily suspended in midair. As I turned my gaze toward Kigo Mitsuji opposite me, the system's crosshair automatically locked onto him, and rows of blood-red data instantly surfaced. Target, Kigo Mitsuji faction, T-side, hostile, enemy economy, $16,000, abundant funds, full buy status, equipment status, full armor, rifle, full utility, possesses overwhelming business destruction power. What shocked me even more was that when my gaze fell upon the merger and acquisition contract on the desk, the system interface actually emitted a piercing beep beep alarm. Hovering above the contract was a flashing red C4 bomb icon. Tactical detection, enemy planted C4, malicious MNA trap, detected threat level, lethal defusal analysis. Hidden debt stripping mechanisms exist in Article 7 on page 14 and the supplementary clauses on page 22 of the contract. Once signed, detonated, the player's core patent assets will be wiped out, and a mandatory debt of 300 million will be bound. System recommendation, currently lacking a defuse kit, top-tier legal team. The success rate for a forced defusal is 0. Suggest abandoning this bomb site to save economy. Looking at the crystal-clear system prompts before me, a storm of shock surged in my heart, followed immediately by an uncontrollable wave of ecstasy. Not only had the heavens given me a second chance at life, but they had also granted me a tactical cheat capable of seeing through every commercial ruse. In the tactical framework of CS2, since the opponent is on a full-buy rifle round while I am on a pistol round with only $800, taking them head-on is suicide. The only viable tactic is to avoid their spearhead and preserve myself. Yorklin? Kigo Mitsuji frowned slightly, seeing that I hadn't moved for a while. There was a faint, barely perceptible hint of urgency in his voice. It's getting late. Sign it quickly so you can get some good rest. As for the bank, I'll take care of everything for you. I took a deep breath and unclenched my fists. Instead of reaching for the Mont Blanc pen on the desk, I slowly leaned back against the chair, looking at him with a gaze so calm it surprised even me. President Mitsuji, I appreciate your generosity, I said, a cold arc curling at the corner of my mouth. But I refuse. The moment those words left my mouth, the air in the office seemed to freeze instantly. A brief crack appeared in the hypocritical mask on Kigo Mitsuji's face. He narrowed his eyes, and his originally gentle voice instantly dropped to freezing point. Yoru Jinguji, do you have any idea what you're saying? When the sun rises tomorrow, if my capital isn't injected, your company will be declared bankrupt. You'll be driven to jump off a building by loan sharks. Then don't trouble yourself with my concerns. I stood up, looking down at him without yielding an inch. Even if Jinguji Tech undergoes bankruptcy liquidation tomorrow, I will not turn it into a trash bin for the Mitsuji Financial Group to use for money laundering and debt transfers. Please leave. Kigo Mitsuji stared intently at me, seemingly trying to find any trace of a bluff on my face. But he failed. Finally, he let out a cold snort, stood up abruptly, and snatched the contract off the table. You stubborn fool, choosing the hard way over the easy one. I'll be waiting to see exactly how you die tomorrow. Bang! The office door was slammed shut. As Mitsuji departed, the flashing C4 icon on the system interface dissipated along with him. System notification: fatal trap successfully evaded. Survival reward issued. Current round ended. Entering next round. Player economy settlement in progress. I walked to the window and watched Mitsuji's black Rolls-Royce slowly merge into Tokyo's neon at night. The evening breeze blew through the gap in the window against my face, leaving me with an unprecedented sense of clarity. I survived the first round's pistol round. But tomorrow, the crisis of the company's capital chain completely collapsing still looms. My accounts are empty, and I can't even afford the employees' salaries for next month. This is a total eco round. I stared at the system's economy panel faintly flickering on my retina, my gaze gradually sharpening like a blade. Mitsuji, the real hunt has only just begun. It was 2 a.m. in Tokyo, and the neon lights outside the window were projected onto the carpet of the top floor of the Jinguji Technology building like mottled bloodstains. The office was completely empty. To save on electricity, I hadn't even turned on the overhead lights. Although I had successfully fended off Kigo Mitsuji's hostile takeover yesterday and kept the company from changing hands immediately, the guillotine hanging over my head remained. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, that 50 million yen bank loan would fall due. Without that money, the bank would forcibly initiate bankruptcy liquidation proceedings. In the tactical framework of CS2, when your team's funds are depleted and you can't even afford body armor or rifles, you are forced into an ECO round. In this round, players can only use free pistols, struggling to survive on the map, and sometimes even having to scavenge weapons dropped by enemies to arm themselves. I closed my eyes and summoned the system in my mind. Activate tactical panel, enable global X-ray mode. Command confirmed. X-ray vision activated. Current consumption, 10 mental power points. Current round status, eco round. Team economy, 0 yen. Suggestion: search for hidden resources on the map. When I opened my eyes again, the entire world had undergone a cataclysmic transformation. All physical matter lost its original color, turning into grid-like outlines sketched by gray, translucent lines. I could see through the wooden top of the desk to the messy scrap paper in the drawers. I could see through the walls to the water flowing through the pipes. I began to search carefully through this office, which had belonged to my father when he was chairman. As my gaze swept across the bookshelves, the safe, and the bed in the lounge, most items appeared as a worthless grayish-white in the system's field of vision. Time ticked away second by second, and fine beads of sweat began to seep from my forehead. The massive depletion of my mental energy caused waves of dizziness to wash over me. Had my father really left no backup plan at all? Just as I was about to deactivate the X-ray vision mode to take a brief rest, my peripheral vision caught a glimpse of the massive ukiyo-e scroll hanging behind the desk. Within the wooden interlayer at the back of the frame, a sharp, golden highlight flickered faintly. I strode over, tore the painting down, and fumbled with my fingers along the back of the frame. Sure enough, in the bottom right corner, the texture of one wooden panel felt slightly loose. I pried it hard, and with a click, a hidden compartment popped out. Lying quietly inside was a black, military-grade encrypted flash drive. When I focused my gaze on the USB drive, the system immediately provided a detailed tactical analysis. Epic hidden drop discovered, unpublished core asset. Item name, Shinin high-frequency trading algorithm underlying source code. Ownership, independently developed by Shoichi Jinguji, your father. Not recorded in the corporate asset database, exempt from bankruptcy liquidation. Market intelligence, Mitsui Investment, the second largest financial group in Kanto, is currently suffering daily losses of millions due to a zero-day vulnerability in their high-frequency trading system. They are in urgent need of this type of underlying architecture patch. Looking at the red intelligence text floating before my eyes, I felt my heart racing. Father, you had long anticipated the schemes of that old dog Mitsuji, which is why you stripped this core technology from the company and hid it here. The system hadn't just helped me find the gun for this desperate counterattack. It had even marked the buyer for me. Without a moment's hesitation, I immediately opened my computer and sent an anonymous email to the CTO of Mitsui Investment via an encrypted network. The email contained only 1,000th of the Kamigakure algorithm's test code, along with a brief message. If you want to plug your capital loophole, prepare 100 million yen. We talk via video in 5 minutes. In less than 3 minutes, the communication software on the screen began to flash frantically. The video connected, and a gray-haired man with an anxious expression appeared on the screen. Seeing my young face, he was clearly taken aback. Are you that kid from the Jinguji family? Did you write this code? It doesn't matter who wrote it. What matters is that it can save your lives. I didn't waste words and cut straight to the point. 100 million yen for the exclusive rights to this patch. I know your losses from yesterday alone were far more than that. The old man frowned, attempting to intimidate me with the seasoned pressure of a business veteran. Young man, opportunistic extortion is not a good habit. 50 million. And I'll have the funds transferred immediately. I let out a cold sneer. Under the system's god-eye view, the old man's current psychological bottom line was clearly displayed above his head: enemy economic limit, 300 million Japanese yen. Current status, extreme panic. 120 million. For every minute you hesitate, the price goes up by 10 million. I lean back in my chair, staring at the screen expressionlessly. Mr. Mitsui, you can choose to refuse, and then watch as the wolves of Wall Street tear your vulnerability completely apart. The gamble lasted for a brief 10 seconds. The old man sighed dejectedly, spitting out 2 words through gritted teeth. Deal! At 5 o'clock in the morning, as the first rays of dawn pierced the Tokyo night sky, a massive remittance of 120 million yen arrived in my offshore account exactly on schedule. 9 o'clock sharp. The glass doors of Jinguji Technologies were shoved open violently. 3 bank debt collectors in suits, accompanied by 2 court enforcement officers, swaggered inside. The lead bank manager, a pot-bellied man, wore a smile of undisguised contempt. Young Master Jinguji, time's up. The manager slammed a bankruptcy liquidation document onto my desk, his voice loud enough for the entire floor to hear. 50 million in debt, not a single yen less. Sign this, and the bank officially takes over this company. President Mitsuji gave us specific orders to take good care of you. I sat in the executive chair, looking at his smug, villainous face. I slowly took a freshly issued cashier's check from the drawer and tossed it at his face like a piece of trash. Shut your filthy mouth and take a good look at the numbers. 50 million, principal plus interest, not a penny less. The manager was about to snap after being hit in the face by the check, but when he saw the amount and the glaring gold bank seal, the sneer on his face instantly froze. His eyes bulged like copper bells as he repeatedly confirmed the string of zeros in disbelief. This is impossible. You were clearly bankrupt yesterday. How could you possibly have 50 million? He shrieked, stammering like a cat that had its tail stepped on. Take your money and get out of my company. I stood up, looking down at him with cold eyes. Go back and tell Kigo Mitsuji that if he wants to swallow me whole, he'd better make sure his teeth are sharp enough. Watching them scurry out of the office with their tails between their legs, I let out a long, heavy sigh of relief. System notification, Economic Round 1. Your finances have significantly recovered. Current capital reserves, 70 million yen. The first shot of the counterattack has been fired. In this brutal game of Zaibatsu power struggles, I have already reached for the enemy's throat. The early morning sunlight failed to dispel the chill in my office. Although the 50 million yen debt alarm had been cleared, I knew all too well that Kigo Mitsuji would never stop there. Through the gaps in the blinds, I coldly watched a black van parked at the street corner opposite the building. On the system's tactical radar, That vehicle was flashing a piercing red light. It was a lookout sent by Mitsuji to monitor me. I currently have 70 million yen in cash flow, but in the face of the Mitsuji conglomerate, and its hundreds of billions in assets, this sum isn't even enough to get stuck between their teeth. To topple this behemoth, I cannot fight them head-on. I need a dagger that can silently pierce the enemy's heart, top-tier intelligence and network control. I summoned the system panel in my mind. Open the tactical shop. Command confirmed. Current available tactical points, 100, reward from the previous round's economic victory. Purchase tactical item, smoke grenade, information warfare special. Cost, 50 points. Item effect, releases false business intelligence, creating a massive information fog that blocks enemy detection vision for 24 hours. Use smoke grenade. I muttered silently in my mind. The system interface instantly erupted into a thick animation of gray smoke. Immediately after, I picked up the landline on my desk and dialed the head of the finance department, intentionally raising my voice. Listen, leak the word to the media immediately. Jinguji Tech is preparing to use the entire 70 million in funds to fully acquire that abandoned traditional plastics factory in Shiba Prefecture. Yes, right now, execute it immediately. In less than 10 minutes, the red dots on the system radar that had been fixated on me suddenly shifted direction, like sharks scenting blood, and raced toward Shiba Prefecture. A cunning fox like Mitsuji is naturally suspicious. He will undoubtedly believe I am attempting to transfer assets in a desperate last stand, thereby focusing all his attention on that worthless, abandoned factory. The enemy's vision has been completely obscured. The time for a surprise attack has arrived. I changed into an inconspicuous black hooded windbreaker, bypassed the lobby surveillance, and slipped out of the building through a blind spot in the underground garage. Taking the crowded tram, I made my way deep into a dilapidated alley in Akihabara, thick with the smell of machine oil and cheap perfume. Pushing open the rusted iron door of an underground internet cafe named Geek Corridor, I walked straight toward the VIP booth at the very back. According to the memories of my past life, this place hid the most terrifying genius hacker of the Kanto underground network, codenamed White Fox. I slammed the private booth door open. In the dimly lit room, a girl in an oversized gray hoodie was curled up in a large gaming chair. She wore thick black-rimmed glasses, and beneath her slightly messy shoulder-length hair was a face so pale it was almost translucent. She was staring intently at 3 monitors simultaneously flashing streams of green code, mechanically stuffing a cold convenience store tuna rice ball into her mouth. Yukino Hiragi. On the surface, she was a cold, aloof female student from the Department of Information Engineering at the University of Tokyo, but in the shadows, she held the digital lifelines of countless multinational corporations in her hands. Get out. This booth isn't open for business, she said without turning her head, her voice as cold as the Siberian tundra. I ignored her warning, locked the door, and pulled over a worn-out folding chair to sit beside her. Under the system's X-ray vision mode, a detailed data panel emerged above Yukino's head. Target, Yukino Hiragi, codename, White Fox, tactical value, SSS class, top-tier cyber infiltrator, current status, extremely exhausted, mentally strained. Fatal weakness, urgently needs 10 million yen to pay for her younger sister's heart bypass surgery, due tomorrow. Currently forced to take on low-paying, high-risk tasks from the dark web. I watched her pale fingers flying across the keyboard, then pulled an anonymous black bank card from my trench coat pocket and slapped it onto the table covered in ash and cola stains. Stop those cheap, dirty jobs that could be traced by the cyber police at any moment. I looked at her profile, my voice calm but broke no argument. There are 10 million yen in this card. The password is your sister's birthday. Yukino's typing came to a sudden halt. The entire room fell into a deathly silence, with only the hum of the computer fans echoing. She slowly turned her head, her eyes hidden behind thick lenses staring at me like a small beast driven into a corner. Who are you? Yukino's voice was low, carrying an undisguised hint of killing intent. One of Mitsuji's people? Investigating me? If I were one of Mitsuji's people, the one standing in front of you wouldn't be me, but the Cybercrime Investigation Division of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. I let out a cold laugh, looking her straight in the eye. I am Jinguji Yoru, Mitsuji's mortal enemy. I pointed at the black card on the table. This is just a trivial deposit. Work for me, and I can not only guarantee your sister the best medical resources in all of Japan, but also ensure you never have to hide in a dark rat hole like this again. Yukino bit her lower lip hard, her gaze darting back and forth between me and the black card. Clearly, 10 million in cash was a life-saving straw that she, in her current state, could not refuse. What do you want me to do? She finally spoke, her voice somewhat raspy. I want you to be my eyes and my blade. I leaned in closer, enunciating every word. I want you to help me hack into the core network of the Midasuji Zaibatsu and tear through their hypocritical defenses. I want him to have no place to be buried. Yukino stared at me fixedly for a full 10 seconds. Suddenly, she took off the clunky black-rimmed glasses she used as a disguise and tossed them casually into the trash, revealing a pair of sharp, cold eyes brimming with frantic ambition. She snatched the black card into her palm, the corners of her mouth curling into a dangerous arc. Jinguji Yoru, is it? You really are an absolute lunatic. Yukino turned back, her slender fingers resting on the keyboard once more. But I like lunatics. White Fox, awaiting orders. At that moment, a dazzling golden light popped up on the system interface. Tactical briefing, SSS level agent successfully recruited. Team combat power significantly enhanced. The smoke grenade's cover was flawless, and I already had the sharpest dagger firmly in my grasp. My smokescreen, tactics bought precious breathing room for Jinguji Technologies, but Kigo Midasuji is by no means an ordinary opponent. In less than 24 hours, he saw through the deception at the abandoned factory in Shiba Prefecture. Having failed to find my weakness in the shadows, this old fox did not hesitate to launch the most intense suppressive fire out in the open. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I sat in the temporary war room on the top floor of the company, which had just undergone a thorough anti-eavesdropping sweep. The massive curved screen was densely packed with news headlines from major television stations and online media outlets. Former genius turned gambler. Young master of Jinguji Tech embezzles 70 million in public funds. Midasuji conglomerate heartbroken. Acquisition blocked as Jinguji Yoru demands sky-high hush money. Hundreds of employees face unemployment, while unscrupulous rich heir squanders fortunes at Ginza nightclubs. In the news reports, several extras posing as former employees of Jinguji Tech were weeping before the cameras, denouncing my atrocities. On online forums, paid trolls swarmed like a plague of locusts, dragging my ancestors through the mud. The already precarious reputation of Jinguji Tech was, at this moment, driven completely into the abyss. Truly a textbook smear campaign. Sitting beside me, Yukino Hiragi bit down on a lollipop, her fingers moving like a blur across the mechanical keyboard. Right now, every netizen in Japan wants to skin you alive. Your social media accounts have been completely overrun. Want me to help you fry their servers? No rush, I said, staring coldly at the screen. On my retina, the system interface was flashing crimson warning lights frantically. Warning: encountering enemy information warfare suppression. Enemy status: full firepower deployed, attempting to destroy the player's final line of defense through psychological operations. System suggestion: use tactical throwables for counter-suppression. Without hesitation, I pulled up the tactical shop, my gaze locking onto the icon flashing with a blinding white light. Purchase tactical item, flashbang. Cost: 50 tactical points. Item configured. Flashbang, global blind bypasses all network firewalls to instantly hijack all enemy audiovisual media, triggering a web-wide information blackout and public opinion backlash. Yukino. I turned my head to look at the top-tier netrunner beside me. Did you find what I asked you to dig up? A dangerous sneer curled at the corner of Yukino's mouth as she struck the enter key with force. The news footage on the screen was instantly cut, replaced by documents bearing the top-secret seals of the Midasuji Zaibatsu, and several clips of high-definition surveillance footage. That old fossil Kigo Midasuji donates tens of millions to the Angel Orphanage every year on the surface, but behind the scenes, he's using it as a shell company for underground money laundering. A glimmer of excitement flashed in Yukino's eyes. He exploited the tax-exempt status of charitable foundations to launder at least 500 million in dirty money for several Kanto Yakuza syndicates. Here are all the transfer records, offshore account details, and a complete recording of him splitting the loot with a Yakuza boss in a secret room last month. Looking at the mountain of irrefutable evidence, a cold fury ignited in my heart. Midasuji, you used that mask of hypocrisy to drive my father to his death. Today, I'm going to rip that mask off along with your skin. At 3 this afternoon, Midasuji is holding a press conference at the Imperial Hotel, right? I checked my watch. Exactly. He plans to announce a compulsory bankruptcy filing for Jinguji Tech at the conference, playing the role of a heartbroken savior. Yukino interlaced her fingers, her knuckles cracking. What do you need me to do? Take these things and deliver them to his press conference as a gift. I stood up, my gaze sharp and piercing. I want the entirety of Tokyo to witness this magnificent display of fireworks. Exactly 3 p.m. Inside the ballroom of the Imperial Hotel, camera flashes flickered incessantly. Kigo Mitsuji stood at the podium under the spotlight, dressed in a sharp, custom-tailored suit. With reddened eyes and a voice heavy with grief, he spoke into hundreds of cameras and microphones. Shoichi Jinguji was my dearest friend. I wanted to do everything in my power to preserve his life's work. But unfortunately, his son, Yoru Jinguji, has been blinded by greed and depravity. For the sake of social responsibility, and to prevent more employees from suffering, I had no choice but to make this painful decision. Now, throw the flashbangs. I issued the final command from the operations room. Watch closely, this is a god to play. Yukino slammed her palm down on the red enter key. At the very moment Mitsuji was about to declare a forced bankruptcy, the power of the system item, flashbang, detonated in the real world. Inside the Imperial Hotel banquet hall, the massive 20-meter LED background screen erupted without warning into a blinding, pure white glare, like a supernova explosion. What's happening? My eyes! The journalists and guests throughout the venue were momentarily blinded by the sudden, piercing glare, clutching their eyes in pain as the scene descended into massive panic and chaos. Even Kigo Mitsuji was shaken, stumbling back 2 steps before collapsing clumsily into the chair behind him. Immediately following, the blinding light dissipated. In its place, high-definition surveillance footage and billing statements appeared starkly on the screen. From the ballroom's top-tier sound system, Kigo Mitsuji's voice, dripping with greed and coldness, rang out at a deafening volume. What do those orphans matter? They're nothing more than perfect tax evasion tools. Tell the Yamaguchi-gumi people that for this 200 million yen account, I want a 30% commission. If it's short by even a single cent, they can forget about laundering money through my foundation next time. The entire venue fell into a deathly silence. The reporters, who had been covering their eyes, now ignored the stinging pain and stared wide-eyed at the screen. It wasn't just the Imperial Hotel. At that same moment, bolstered by the flashbang system and Yukino's top-tier hacking skills, every electronic billboard across Tokyo, from the Shibuya crossing and the skyscraper facades of Shinjuku to the live stream notifications on everyone's phones, synchronized to play the video after a brief flash of white light. This flashbang had blinded the enemy's vision, yet it illuminated the ugliest depths of Mitsuji's soul. Turn it off. Turn it off right now. Kigo Mitsuji roared like a madman on stage, scrambling frantically to pull the power cables for the screen. His mask of perfect hypocrisy was now utterly shattered, his pale face a portrait of sheer terror and despair. But it was all too late. The reporters, finally coming to their senses, were like a pack of wolves catching the scent of blood, frantically aiming their cameras and microphones at the notorious hypocrite on stage. The flashes were so dense they turned the room as bright as day. Tactical briefing, flashbang perfectly hit the enemy's core position. Enemy status, public opinion stronghold completely collapsed. Reputation points zeroed out. System evaluation, a textbook counterattack. The situation for the current round has been completely reversed. I watched Mitsuji Kigo on the screen, pinned down and unable to move an inch by the swarming reporters. I slowly picked up the black coffee beside me and took a sip. This is just the beginning, Mitsuji, I said softly to the screen. Are you ready for my long gun round? Outside the window, Tokyo's first heavy rainstorm since the onset of autumn had begun. Pea-sized raindrops lashed frantically against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Jinguji Technology Building, yet they could not drown out the urgent clatter of keyboards inside. Exactly 18 hours had passed since the earth-shattering scandal triggered by the flashbang incident at the Imperial Hotel. On the large screen, the Tokyo Stock Exchange had just opened. The K-line chart representing the Mitsuji Zaibatsu stock price was like a lead ball with its rope severed, plummeting toward the limit down price at a heart-stopping vertical angle. The wave of condemnation online remained overwhelming, and the Metropolitan Police Department had even established a special task force overnight to investigate his involvement in underworld money laundering. Beautifully done, boss. Hiragi Yukino sat cross-legged in her gaming chair, taking a deep gulp of iced coffee with triple sugar, her eyes shimmering with bloodshot streaks of excitement. The partners for his core flagship project, Roppongi Cyber Tower, have already begun collective breach of contract. The old fox's reputation is in tatters, and the banks, unable to withstand the pressure of public opinion, are ready to pull their loans at any moment. I stood by the window, watching the traffic below flow like a stream of ants, yet my gaze did not relax in the slightest. Kigo Mitsuji was a financial titan who had occupied Tokyo Bay for 30 years. He could not be killed by mere disgrace alone. As long as his capital chain remained intact, and as long as he held a massive cash flow, he could hire top-tier legal teams at high costs and leverage political connections to forcibly drag this crisis into a long, drawn-out quagmire. In the world of capital, money is the most indestructible bulletproof vest. Trace the fund movements of all offshore accounts under his name. I turned and issued the command. Yukino's fingers flew across the keys, and a few seconds later, a massive red progress bar popped up on the screen. Just as you predicted. The old man is sacrificing his pawns to save the king. Yukino adjusted her non-existent glasses, her tone growing urgent. He's activated the highest level emergency protocol. 3 secret accounts in the Cayman Islands are being merged. A massive sum of 5 billion yen is being prepared for laundering through Swiss underground banks, intended to be forcibly injected into the Roppongi Cyber Tower project under the guise of anonymous overseas investment. 5 billion yen. Once this massive influx of capital is complete, the Roppongi project will be brought back to life. Mitsuji could then use this core asset as a bulwark to stabilize the conglomerate's foundation. He wants to retreat into his strongest fortress and hold his ground. Trying to run? I sneered, awakening the system in my mind. Tactical panel deployed. Current turn status, pursuit. Detected enemy main force undergoing strategic relocation, attempting to seek cover. System suggestion, purchase tactical item Molotov cocktail, area denial/damage over time. Current available tactical points, 80. Purchase cost, 50. Purchase Molotov cocktail. Target locked, Mitsuji Conglomerate's Cayman Islands Fund Transfer Channel. I muttered to myself. Command confirmed. Molotov cocktail thrown. Combustion zone generating. All financial escape routes for the target will be forcibly severed, triggering sustained liquidity incineration. As the system's cold notification faded, I strode to the tactical console, bracing my hands against the desk and staring intently at the red progress bar representing the fund transfer. Yukino, listen carefully. My voice sounded exceptionally cold amidst the roar of the thunderstorm. Take the ledger we intercepted yesterday documenting his bribes to the Yakuza. Package it through the highest level encrypted network and send it directly to the Financial Action Task Force, with copies to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and the Special Investigation Department of the Tokyo District Public Prosecutor's Office. Remember, detonate it with precision the exact moment the transfer progress hits 99%. In tactical systems, the purpose of a Molotov cocktail has never been to kill the enemy directly, but rather to block their only path, forcing them into a dilemma amidst the flames to be slowly reduced to ashes. And on the financial battlefield, the most terrifying fire is a regulatory freezing order. Understood. Watch me turn up the heat on this old fox. A manic smile curled at the corners of Yukino's mouth, her finger hovering steadily above the enter key. On the large screen, the progress bar for the fund transfer was surging frantically. 70%, 80%, 90%. Now! I barked. Slap! Yukino struck the enter key with force. A miracle, or rather, the absolute law of the system, manifested thunderously in the real world. At the very last second, just as Mitsuji's 5 billion yen was about to cross national borders and complete its laundering process, the SWIFT channel representing the International Financial Settlement System suddenly flashed a blinding red light. Immediately following, the entire screen interface was forcibly locked, with a massive, frozen, status bar stretching across the center of the display. It worked! Yukino jumped up in excitement. The U.S. side immediately triggered a transnational anti-money laundering red alert, and the Tokyo District Public Prosecutor's Office issued a synchronized asset freeze order. Those 5 billion yen are now completely stuck in the International Settlement and Clearing Center's accounts. They've become total dead money. I let out a long, heavy breath. The flames from the Molotov cocktail had precisely sealed off Mitsuji's path of retreat. Not only was his reputation now in tatters, but even his final trump card for survival had been swallowed by the fire. The landline on the desk suddenly began to ring frantically. The caller ID displayed a string of encrypted, garbled characters. I pressed the speakerphone button, and the heavy, ragged breathing of Kigo Mitsuji, sounding like a dying beast, immediately filled the room. Jinguji Yoru. It was you! What the hell did you do? Why is the Special Investigation Department targeting my Cayman accounts? His voice was hoarse and desperate, stripped of every bit of the haughty, high society demeanor he once possessed. I simply set a fire on the path of your escape, I said, my voice calm and devoid of any emotion. Mitsuji, don't you enjoy swallowing up the hard work of others? Now, it's your turn to feel what it's like to be roasted over the flames. You think you've won? Mitsuji roared hysterically on the other end of the line. Even if my funds are frozen, I still have dozens of industrial factories under my name. As long as I don't give in, don't even think about I had no interest in listening to his impotent, raging nonsense, and reached out to cut the call. Yukino. I turned my head, watching the stocks associated with the Mitsuji Financial Group collapse completely on the screen due to the broken capital chain. A cold, murderous intent flashed in the depths of my eyes. Boss, give the word. Yukino was rubbing her hands together, fully prepared for a major showdown. Take the 170 million in cash we have on hand, add 10 times off-exchange leverage, and throw it all in. I pointed at the sea of miserable green numbers on the screen. Strike while he's down. Short his core industries across the board. I want to drain his very marrow before the market closes today. The sniper's crosshairs were locked on the target. The firepower of this long gun round was only just beginning to pour out. At exactly 1 p.m., the afternoon session of the Tokyo Stock Exchange opened right on time. The torrential rain outside continued to rage, with gale-force winds driving the downpour violently against the floor-to-ceiling windows, as if sounding the horn for the impending slaughter. I stood before the massive curved screen, watching the flickering trading data. A long-absent coldness and exhilaration surged through my veins. After several rounds of tactical maneuvering, we had finally transitioned from a disadvantaged eco round into a fully funded buy round. In the system's tactical definitions, a buy round meant that both sides would reveal their most lethal heavy weaponry, engaging in an unreserved exchange of firepower on the main battlefield. Boss, the 10 times over-the-counter leverage has been fully configured. Hiragi Yukino's fingers flew across the keyboard, leaving a blur of afterimages. Her eyes, hidden beneath messy bangs, shimmered with the light of a predator. The 170 million principal has now expanded into 1.7 billion short-selling bullets. Ready to fire at any time. System, confirm current status. I commanded in my mind. Tactical panel updated, currently entering the long gun round head-on confrontation phase. Available tactical points, 30. Purchase tactical ammunition, armor-piercing rounds. Cost, 30 points. Item effect, grants the next financial attack the true armor penetration attribute, precisely piercing the truss chain of the enemy's defensive line and causing an irreversible collapse. Purchase armor-piercing rounds. I muttered inwardly, then turned to look at Yukino. Dump it all in. Short the Mitsuji conglomerate. Roger that. Watch me smash that old geezer's head in. Yukino slammed the enter key. In an instant, a massive short order of 1.7 billion fell like a heavy aerial bomb, landing precisely on the Mitsuji Zaibatsu's already teetering market position. The stock K-line chart on the large screen reacted violently, the white line representing the share price diving in a suffocating, vertical plunge. 5%, 8%, 10%. However, at the life-or-death moment just as the stock price was about to break through the forced liquidation warning line, an enormous wave of buying orders suddenly surged onto the board. TCH, something's wrong. Yukino's brow furrowed instantly, her fingers flying across the keyboard to perform a counter-trace. A massive wall of capital has appeared. Someone is forcibly propping up the market. The buy orders are at least 3 billion or more. Our short orders have been stopped dead in their tracks. I narrowed my eyes, staring coldly at the screen. Mitsuji Kigo, that old fox who had been entrenched in Tokyo Bay for 30 years, indeed still held a final trump card. Immediately after his funds were frozen, he used dozens of physical processing plants under his name as collateral to borrow emergency capital from several traditional zaibatsu in the Kanto region, forming this seemingly impenetrable defensive line of capital. Boss, the capital from these old-timers is too deep. We're still at a disadvantage in terms of frontal firepower. Yukino bit her lip, a fine layer of sweat breaking out on her forehead. If we can't break through this wall of funds within half an hour, our tenfold leverage will trigger a reverse liquidation due to insufficient margin. A head-on clash in a buy round is never just about who has more bullets, but about who can drive a bullet straight into the enemy's heart. Don't panic, Yukino. Remember the smoke screen we released at the very beginning? I walked up behind her, placing both hands on the back of her gaming chair, my voice as steady and cold as ancient ice. Yukino froze for a moment, then quickly realized. That abandoned traditional plastics processing plant in Shiba Prefecture? Exactly. A cold smile played on my lips. The system's armor-piercing shell effect had already locked onto the fatal weakness in the enemy's defensive line. Mitsuji thought my previous attempt to buy that factory was a move to divert assets. He later forcibly intercepted the deal and bundled the factory as collateral to the Kanto Zaibatsu as his current lifeline. But he has no idea that buried beneath that factory are 3,000 tons of untreated, highly toxic industrial waste. Once exposed, the astronomical fines alone would be enough to bankrupt any enterprise instantly. Yukino's eyes lit up instantly as she immediately grasped my tactical intent. I see. Those Kanto Zaibatsu aren't truly trying to save Mitsuji. They're just eyeing his collateral. As long as we prove those assets are nothing but toxic trash, this fragile alliance will disintegrate immediately. Armor-piercing shell, chambered. I stared straight at the screen and issued the final sniping order. Send the Environmental Protection Agency's top-secret inspection reports and the underground photos of that factory to all the heads of the Zaibatsu who are propping up Mitsuji. And while you're at it, leak some rumors to the retail investors in the market. Leave it to me. I'll end this fight in 10 seconds. Yukino's fingers transformed into a torrential storm across the keyboard. With one final, crisp keystroke, those lethal pieces of dirt were funneled through countless encrypted overseas nodes, detonating across Tokyo's entire financial circle like a virus. This system buffed. Armor-piercing shell. Precisely shattered the most fragile link in the enemy's defense, trust. The miracle happened in the very next second. The once impregnable $3 billion wall of capital saw a massive wave of order cancellations in just 3 minutes. Those greedy Kanto Zaibatsu, realizing the collateral in their hands was a gas bomb primed to explode at any moment, were scared out of their wits. They not only immediately withdrew all buy orders but even flipped their positions to join the short-selling ranks in a desperate bid for self-preservation. The buy orders are gone! The defensive line has collapsed! Yukino shouted excitedly. Stripped of its final layer of armor, the Mitsuji Zaibatsu was like an old man stripped naked and cast out into the freezing snow. The 17 billion in short orders no longer met any resistance, ruthlessly crushing everything in their path like a torrent of steel. 15%, 20%, 30%. Ding! A sharp, piercing alarm blared through the speakers, the brokerage system's notification of a forced liquidation. Kigo Mitsuji's stock account had fallen below the minimum margin requirement, triggering a mandatory system takeover. All his holdings were being dumped in a frantic sell-off, regardless of cost. This ignited a catastrophic chain reaction. The so-called liquidation stampede had become a brutal reality at this very moment. On the large screen, the K-line plummeted to 0, a sea of shocking, tragic green. Tactical briefing: enemy defense lines have been completely annihilated. By round victory. Player has achieved final victory. Enemy core assets successfully seized. Phew! Yukino slumped into her gaming chair, panting heavily. She then turned her head toward me, a brilliant smile radiating across her face. Boss, we won. That old fox lost everything, right down to his underwear. I looked out the window at the gradually subsiding rainstorm. Sunlight struggled to tear through the dark clouds, spilling over the skyscrapers of Tokyo. This smoke-filled, high-stakes showdown had finally come to a close, with us ending it in a display of total dominance. Before the cheers in the office had even fully died down, the system interface on my retina suddenly turned a blinding crimson without warning. Accompanied by a sharp, heart-stopping beep, a massive line of warning text flashed frantically in the center of my vision. Warning: the bomb has been planted. A lethal systemic financial trap has been detected. C4 detonation countdown, 28 minutes and 45 seconds. The smile on my face instantly froze. In tactical doctrine, when an enemy at an absolute disadvantage is driven into a corner, they often choose to plant C4 explosives at their core position in an attempt to take their opponent down with them. On the brutal financial battlefield, this usually signifies an extremely vicious, poison pill strategy. Just then, the private line on the desk rang abruptly. I picked up the phone, and Kigo Mitsuji's hoarse, frenzied laughter echoed through the receiver, sounding like a demon crawling out of hell. Jinguji Yoru, do you really think you've won? Do you think that by taking over my Roppongi cyber tower, you've completely crushed me under your boot? What have you done? I asked in a cold voice. Go check the Evergreen Sunset Trust. That's the grand gift I've prepared for you. Mitsuji panted heavily, his tone laced with the madness of someone seeking mutual destruction. I embedded a hedging agreement deep within the building's title protocols long ago. By winning my assets, you've automatically inherited this debt. Enjoy the next half hour, young Master Jinguji. The call was abruptly cut off. I immediately turned to Yukino Hiragi. Yukino, check the Evergreen Trust. Now! The ease on Yukino's face vanished instantly. Her fingers hammered against the keyboard as lines of code cascaded down the screen like a waterfall. In less than 10 seconds, her face turned as pale as a sheet of paper. Boss! We've stepped on a landmine. Yukino's voice even carried a hint of a tremble. That old lunatic actually pulled a fast one. He used the building's property rights as secret collateral to issue high-interest wealth management products to over 20,000 retirees across Japan. The capital pool is as large as 8 billion yen. A dense electronic contract popped up on the large screen. The guarantor's signature at the very bottom had, shockingly, automatically changed to the official seal of Jinguji Technology 5 minutes ago due to our forced takeover of the building. What's even more fatal is that he emptied the capital pool in advance. Yukino stared intently at the ticking countdown in the upper right corner of the screen. At exactly 4 p.m., which is 25 minutes from now, this 8 billion yen wealth management product will automatically enter the redemption and liquidation process. Once there's no money on the books, the system will release a default announcement to the entire network. As the current legal guarantor, you will face the wrath of 20,000 victims and immediate arrest by the Special Investigation Department for illegal fundraising fraud. This was an extremely vicious serial trap. Mitsuji had strapped innocent retail investors to a bomb, using a massive debt of 8 billion yen as C4, just waiting for the time to run out to blow me and Jinguji Technology to smithereens. If I went to prison, he could easily use his remaining political connections to clean up the mess from the outside. This old man wants us to take the fall for him. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down as I pulled up the system store in my mind. Current tactical phase, minefield demolition. Purchase tactical item, defusal kit. Consumes all remaining tactical points. Item effect, grants supreme tampering authority over underlying financial logic, severs fraudulent debt chains, and precisely traces the detonation wiring back to the original mine layer. Purchase the defusal kit. I commanded without a moment's hesitation. Kit configured. Player must cut the red, fund disguise, or blue, liability transfer, fuse before the countdown ends. Yukino, take control of the settlement center's underlying servers. I leaned over the back of her chair, my gaze burning with intensity. The 8 billion yen Mitsuji drain couldn't have just vanished into thin air. He must have hidden it in an overseas cryptocurrency cold wallet that doesn't require real name authentication. But tracing the source would take at least 3 months. We have less than 20 minutes left. Yukino bit her lip in desperation, drawing blood. It won't take 3 months. I'll clear the path for you. At that moment, the system's bomb disposal kit worked like a miracle. Following my command, the garbled code on Yukino's screen suddenly reorganized itself. The dark web transaction nodes, originally hidden behind top-tier firewalls, were exposed before us layer by layer, like an onion being peeled. My God! What kind of god-tier backdoor exploit is this? Yukino gasped, a frantic fighting spirit reigniting in her eyes. Her hands became a blur across the keyboard. I see it! 3 anonymous trust accounts in the Cayman Islands. The funds are exactly 8 billion yen. 3 minutes left. I stared intently at the countdown on the large screen signaling the bomb's detonation, my palms slick with cold sweat. Can you reconnect the fuse? Leave it to me. I'm going to shove this bomb right back down Mitsuji's throat. The only sounds remaining in the office were the rapid-fire clatter of the keyboard and the thunderous thumping of heartbeats. 2 minutes. 1 minute. 30 seconds. Modifying the underlying collateral agreement. Locking target cold wallet IP address. Enforcing smart contract replacement. Yukino muttered incessantly, the faint blue light of the screen reflecting in her eyes. 10 seconds. 9 seconds. 8 seconds. The fund transfer channel can't cover it. His cold wallet has physical security encryption. Yukino suddenly shouted. Cut the blue fuse. Don't transfer the funds. Forcefully write his biometric data and the digital signature of his encrypted account directly into the final layable party column of the wealth management product. I made a split-second decision, using the final permissions of the bomb disposal kit to issue the terminal command. 4 seconds. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. Enter! Asterisk slap. Asterisk Yukino slammed her hand down hard on the keyboard. Tactical briefing, defusal successful. C4 has been safely disarmed. Crisis averted. The suffocating crimson countdown on the screen froze dead at 1 second, in its final second. Immediately following, the clearing center settlement procedure launched as scheduled. However, the debt invoice that should have been directed at Jinguji Tech was forcibly rewritten by the system, locking on to Kigo Mitsuji's 80 billion yen in hidden offshore crypto assets like a precision-guided missile. The settlement was successful. Yukino collapsed into her chair, her body drenched as if she had just been pulled from the water. The principal for those 20,000 elderly people was deducted directly from Mitsuji's secret accounts to balance the books. The Jinguji Tech corporate seal was proven to be a forgery, completely clearing them from this fraud case. I let out a long sigh of relief and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city as the weather finally cleared. 10 minutes later, an emergency news bulletin broke on the large screen. Breaking news! Kigo Mitsuji, the former chairman of the Mitsuji Financial Group, has been arrested on the spot by the Special Investigation Department of the Tokyo District Public Prosecutor's Office. He was apprehended while attempting to flee in a private helicopter on suspicion of massive illegal fundraising and malicious money laundering. On the screen, the once arrogant financial tycoon now had disheveled hair and cold handcuffs on his wrists, being forcibly shoved into a police car by several agents. The lethal trap he had desperately laid out ultimately became the grave in which he'd buried himself. The bomb has been defused. I looked at Mitsuji's despairing face on the screen and drained my cold coffee in one gulp. This game. We won. 3 days later. Tactical briefing. All enemy forces have scattered. All positions have been completely lost. Tactical achievement unlocked. AC, team wipe. System settlement. Hostal has successfully annexed the target faction. The Zaibatsu advancement path is now open. In his mind, the system's cold yet melodic notification sound brought a final conclusion to this thrilling financial meat grinder of a war. Tokyo, Roppongi Cyber Tower, Penthouse CO Office. This was once the throne of power from which Kigo Mitsuji issued his commands, but now, I am the one standing before that massive floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the view. Boss, the final liquidation report is out. Yukino Hiragi pushed open the heavy mahogany double doors, holding a slim tablet in her hand. Today, she had rarely opted for a well-tailored black professional suit. Though she still wore a pair of mismatched canvas shoes, she already exuded the subtle competence of a conglomerate executive. Read it, I said, turning around to face the hacker genius who had fought by my side. Yukino cleared her throat, her eyes unable to hide her excitement. Following the district prosecutor's office's overnight liquidation and bankruptcy reorganization, we have taken full control of the Mitsuji Group's core assets at an extremely low price. This includes this Roppongi Cyber Tower, valued at over 150 billion yen, as well as 5 major industrial companies under his name. We also successfully acquired the remaining 60 billion yen in cash flow on the books. After deducting the funds used to cover debt loopholes, our total asset scale has now officially surpassed the 300 billion yen mark. 300 billion. This was no longer game currency existing in a virtual world, but a massive empire of cold, hard cash. What's the situation over at Mitsuji's end now? I walked over to the leather sofa, sat down, and picked up the red wine that had already been decanted on the table. That old fox won't be getting out for the rest of his life. Yukino snorted, unceremoniously pouring herself a glass of cola filled with ice. The Special Investigation Department found ironclad evidence of his involvement in organized crime and money laundering. Combined with the fallout from that 8 billion yen illegal fundraising scheme, he's facing life imprisonment for multiple crimes. His remaining cronies have also been uprooted by the Financial Services Agency over the past few days. The entire Mitsuji faction has been completely wiped out in the Tokyo area. This was the most perfect conclusion in a tactical system. No spark was left for the enemy to stage a comeback. It was a one-hit kill, a total and absolute wipeout. Good work, Yukino. I raised the crystal goblet in my hand, giving her a slight nod. As long as I follow the boss, there's always a seat at the table. Yukino raised her soda can, clinking it crisply against my glass. Bubbles surged within the dark liquid, mirroring the reshaping of the city's power structure at this very moment. I walked back to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the bustling steel jungle beneath my feet. The afterglow of the setting sun was like molten gold, pouring over the crisscrossing streets of Tokyo and dyeing the entire city in a hue of brilliant splendor. From throwing the first flashbang at the Imperial Hotel, to the direct confrontation during the buy round, and finally to the last-second defusal of the bomb. This was not just a financial war. It was a coronation ceremony for the transition of power. I devoured a giant crocodile that had occupied Tokyo for 30 years, turning his flesh and blood into the foundation of my throne. With the support of the system and Yukino's assistance, a brand new business empire has already risen from the ruins. Boss, who are we hitting next? Yukino walked to my side, gazing at the sunset outside the window, her eyes shimmering with a longing for the next round of battle. No rush. I looked at my reflection in the glass window, a composed smile curling at the corners of my mouth. First, let this city get used to the name of its new king. The end. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you.